Hello and welcome to the Parish Church of St Andrew in Stoke Dry, Rutland. The church you see here consists of a nave with north and south aisles, a tower at the west end and a chancel and chantry chapel at the east end. There are north and south porches, the former having over it a small priest's chamber or parvis. Stoke Dry is unusual in that the main entrance is the north door. The earliest part of the tower is its lower section, which dates from the late 13th century. The south porch probably dates from the 17th century and would have been the main entrance to the church at one time. This is late Perpendicular of the Tudor period, and over the north porch is the priest's room or parvis. In the nave, various repairs can be seen to the roof timbers. Some of the beams are very old and partly worn away. This south aisle is 13th century, and the roof has a number of ancient beams which have been spliced, pegged and bound in the course of various restorations. The font is Victorian and replaced an earlier one, the bowl of which remains within the church. The north aisle is 14th century and has a new roof.
The parvis, or priest's room. The tradition that the gunpowder plot of 1603-05 was hatched in this small out-of-the-way room cannot be supported, nor can the other legend that one of the rectors of Stoke Dry shut up a witch in here and starved her to death. It is quite true that Sir Everard Digby had succeeded his father as Lord of the Manor of Stoke Dry in 1592, but he married an heiress and lived in her house in Buckinghamshire. Soon after 1600, he made over his Rutland estates to his young son Kennel. In another place, near the Digby tomb, which we shall see in the sanctuary, the events leading up to and subsequent upon the failure of the gunpowder plot are related. This room was carefully restored in the work of 1969-1970. The roof was renewed and the floor relaid. Ventilation is still rather inadequate and condensation has been a problem. The parvis before the Reformation no doubt served as a lodging for visiting priests who came to hear confessions and to say Mass for the small population.
The pulpit, clergy desk and lectern are recent Victorian additions.
This is a piece of 15th century work, although much mutilated. The rood gallery on top may have been reached by an opening from the Digby chapel. It would have carried our Lord crucified in the centre, St. Mary the Virgin, his mother, and St. John the Beloved. There's a tradition that this screen was brought from Liddington when the new nave was built there in 1500, but this is unlikely. The screen hides 10th century carved pillars.
This screen is 15th century and is thought to have been brought from another church because it does not naturally fit across the beautiful Norman archway to the chancel.
St. Andrew on the left side and the Virgin and Child on the right of the window, as well as the scrollwork on the displays, date from the 14th century.
Here in the Chantry Chapel is an elaborate tomb of freestone with a full-length effigy in plate armour of Everard Digby, who died in 1540. The head has been deliberately damaged at some time. Interestingly, you can see the figures of their 11 children, 2 male, 7 female, and 2 who died as infants. I really enjoyed the quality of this alabaster monument of Kenelm Digby and his wife. You can see from the inscription that he died on the 21st of April 1590. But the date of his wife's death has not been added.
All medieval churches were plastered and lime-washed inside, sometimes outside, and much of the surface was covered with painting. This was in simple colours, the earths, red and yellow, ochre, black and white, pink, etc. St. Christopher and St. Edmund in the Digby Chapel are earlier. These are around 1280. The great figure on the right is St. Christopher, carrying the Christ child on his shoulder. That on the left is St Edmund, the martyred king of East Anglia, being shot at by two bowmen as he stands tied to a tree. It's said that the bowmen resemble American Indians. This would be another link in the chain of evidence that the Vikings rowed their boats to America and returned with stories of head-feathered people who shot arrows 200 years before Columbus. This is known as the Digby Chapel. It must have been built in the late 1200s when Richard Digby, Lord of Tilton, resided and was buried here with his wife. It was completely separated from the south aisle in 1574.
I was particularly enamoured by this door, beautifully made of chamfered planks of oak, with the stone steps cut to fit exactly. The door into the Chancery Chapel is fabulous. Found in the south aisle, this is an alabaster slab of Jaquetta Digby, who died on the 29th of June 1496. Unfortunately, the soft alabaster has been disfigured by having initials carved in it over the past 500 years. Parish Church of St Andrew in Stoke Dry, Rutland.